So it was sort of it was day one was actually pretty good. And honestly, we were on track to beat you at the end of like 24 hours. It's like, okay, we could do this.
So yeah, so we're getting just a little bit of rain.
We're about to Cannonball 2,500 miles in an electric car all the way to Orlando, Florida.
We're essentially going from one major theme park location where it's close to it to another one.
Yeah, we were going to call it D to D, but apparently that major theme park didn't want to have anything to do with us.
We were lucky enough to get the Hyundai Ioniq 5 from our friends at Hyundai, and it's actually a really good car for this type of thing.
All right, we made it to Tucson, and we're here at the Tucson Premium Outlets, and there's only one 350 charger, and it was powered down, so we're rocking a 150, but check this out. It was rocking way over 150. We were at 170 at one point, and now the next stop is going to be a long one. We have to go 175 miles to New Mexico.
Our third state, yeah, we're making pretty good progress.
Times we charged already? A lot.
A lot. We actually skipped a couple that you guys missed when we got to El Paso.
Unlock. There goes the car, unlocks it. Tells us charging was successful. We are in Junction, Texas, in the middle of an epic EV cannonball run.
Well, this will be the final sunset on this trip if everything goes well, or if it goes poorly, that might be just one of many.
Nathan, can you believe it? We've made it to Mississippi.
Yeah, and it's been a great trip so far.
Kind of gets sucky. We had to drive 12 miles off of I-10 to come up here to Mobile's Walmart because this apparently is the only fast charger in the area. 350s, yeah, 350.
Oh, far out.
Yeah, far out.
Oh, yes. Okay.
All right, here we go.
Can we all see the fountain?
We see the fountain. I am stopping it. Officially done.
Howdy, folks. Nathan here with a special guest for a very special occasion, and that's because recently somebody tried to beat our O2O record.
Here it is, everyone. This is the Kia EV6 that Eileen and I will be taking from Disneyland in California to Disney World in Florida to see if we can beat the time set by the guys over at TFL Car. Think we can do it?
Unfortunately, Eileen Falkenberg-Hole is not available today, but Nicole Wakelin is. And Nicole goes way back with TFL. We've known her for quite a while. She's an automotive journalist extraordinaire. She's worked with Wired Magazine. And Eileen and Nicole work with Newsweek's Fast Women podcast. I highly recommend you check that out. And when we threw down the gauntlet, they picked it up and they said, okay, we're going to grab a Kia EV6, which is very similar to the Ioniq 5 that we used, and do the same thing, run cross country and see if we can go and beat their record. And Nicole, I'm gonna bring it up to you because you get to fill us in on exactly what happened, but I wanted everybody to know what your podcast is about and what you guys are about.
Yeah. So Eileen and I have been doing the podcast for about a year. So it's exciting to be on your end of things. Like I'm getting to do a different podcast. It's always fun.
Yeah.
But so we've been doing this podcast, and the idea was just to sort of share the usual car stuff, the reviews, the news, but also to bring in a little bit more of the adventure of it. As you know, Nathan, from all these drives, it's not like you just go drive a car and do nothing. You get to see places and do things and stay at weird hotels and eat weird food. And so we sort of share the whole adventure of not just the car, but also where and what we do when we're out there.
It is a weird lifestyle. And a lot of our viewers and a lot of listeners out there, they don't quite understand that the lifestyle of an automotive journalist is very different than almost any other type of journalist because you're physically involved in something as opposed to, oh, I don't know, picking up an instrument and saying, oh, okay, this is something I need to review. You actually have to get into it, put your life in your own hands, and then drive the thing around. And then, yes, eat weird food, stay at weird places, see fantastic things, and have adventures. So you're absolutely right about that. So, this podcast, which has been around, as I said, for about a year, the two of you host it. How often does it come out and where can it be found?
We do an episode every single week. So you can find it. You actually, if you just look for Newsweek's Fast Women, it will take you right to their site. But we're on all the usual suspects. We're on iTunes and Stitcher and all the good usual spots. But just search Newsweek's Fast Women and you'll find us.
Fantastic. I wanted to point out that Eileen put out some great information on this whole road trip that we're about to cover, and it is there on Newsweek's website. So I do recommend you check it out because she actually goes into the weeds, into detail about all of the stops, everything that's going on, weather, ambient temperature, charge rate, everything that's going on. When Roman and I did it, and I was just telling Nicole this before we went live, we're just like, oh, it's dark or it's light. Maybe there's rain, maybe there's not rain. We're just like, by comparison, we were not as technically prepared. So well done, and kudos to Eileen for doing that. Now, the two of you, you were able to actually get the car from Kia. I'm sure they were laughing, saying to themselves, we get to go up against a Hyundai. That's, should be interesting. So let's go into the trip. Now, first of all, why did you decide to accept this challenge?
Honestly, you know what? It's Roman's fault because I was at dinner with him at a Kia event, and somehow it came up that he was doing this, and I thought it was great. It was before you guys had actually done the drive. And I said, what's it going to do? Okay, I bet I could beat you. I bet we could beat you. You think you could beat us? Kia guys said, you want to try and beat him? So it was literally just sitting at dinner with Roman, and that's how we got the idea. And I went to Eileen and said, do you want to try and beat whatever the guys do? And we gave it a go.
If for those of you who don't know, when we decided to do this O to O, which initially was known as D to D, I know it's confusing. One of the reasons we decided to change the name, which initially was Disney to Disney, Disneyland to Disney World, we were concerned about certain types of fallout that could happen based on using things that might not be allowed to be used by certain people because we're not Disney employees and what have you. So, okay, we changed it to O to O, and that was Orange County to Orange County, but it was still the same run. So did you guys do the same run where you went from one fountain to the other?
We did the same run. We started off and we were at the same spot you did, because you guys were great about sending us the route that you had done, where you even gave us information. You were really helpful for someone trying to beat your record. Information about where you stopped to charge and where the spots were that were sort of tricky, like be careful here because you don't have a lot of other options if you don't stop at this place.
Right.
You gave us a good information, including the fountain to fountain, and we did do it. We got fountain to fountain, but we did not beat you though. We tried. And
let's get into that. So first of all, it was already established that you got the EV6 and it's just the two of you, and you have your gear. You guys had a slightly different end game. I think that when you got to Orlando, you wanted to also go and have a little bit of fun. This was not allowed by Roman. Roman immediately jumped on a plane with our camera guy and left me with the car to drive all the way back to California. That's a different story.
I don't understand how you did that. The fact that you're still alive after doing that crazy run, I'm kind of amazed.
It's a long story, but actually it was cathartic. Something about driving cross country and being a little scared from time to time is kind of cool. But let's get into your trip. So you guys, when did you go to Orange County, California and start the trip?
So we started the trip, we flew in on a Thursday and we decided to start first thing Friday morning. That was our plan because we figured we'd avoid some of the rush hour traffic. We even checked to make sure there was nothing going on at Disney World or Disneyland, because the week before was their marathon. I thought the last thing I want to do is try to drive down there in the middle of a marathon when roads are closed and it's crazy.
Right.
So we started on a Friday morning with the goal, because you guys did it in 46 hours, 46 minutes. We thought, okay, it'll be sometime Sunday-ish that we will arrive. That was the plan. And we did arrive Sunday, just not as early as you guys did.
Right. So you departed California, and I would imagine that many of your stops were similar to ours and in some of the same places. And one of the things that people should know about your vehicle is that it has roughly, I think it's a 250 something mile range, give or take.
Yeah.
The reason why it's give or take is that range is really dependent on the atmospheric pressure, weather, temperature, weight in the car, just so many things. It's an interesting irony because the one thing it doesn't seem to care about is elevation, but we're in Colorado. So going across the country, I'm guessing that you had to stop between 18 and 20 times in order to keep that car charged to make it all the way across.
Yeah, that was the plan. And that's what we figured. We'd have to stop around 20 stops. We ended up having to stop a lot more than that, especially in the last leg, which was part of why we didn't make it. So yeah, it would have been about the same number of stops that you guys made. That was where we started with. It ended differently.
And one of the reasons, just to get right into it, that
Yeah.
you guys really hit some difficulty was weather.
So yeah, so we're getting just a little bit of rain. I mean, just a tiny bit. Look at the roads, people. This is crazy. Look at this rain that we've been in for like hours of this.
That's, judging by what I read,
Yeah.
you guys really hit some hard stuff. Now, just to be, fair, we did hit our share of rain, but nowhere near the amount of torrential flooding that you guys had to go through. When did that start?
So it was sort of it was day one was actually pretty good. And honestly, we were on track to beat you at the end of like 24 hours. It's like, okay, we could do this, not by a huge chunk, but we got them. We can do it. The second day, by the time we were sort of in the Houston area, right about at Houston, just past Houston, the skies opened. And it was, when I say torrential rain, we were getting warnings like tornado warnings and no tornado didn't happen, but still getting those kinds of warnings. The rain on the road, especially as the evening came, was just, I mean, you were driving through it. I'm like, what's the fording depth on a Kia EV6? Because I feel like we might need it on this highway right now.
Yeah. And by the way, they do not recommend you go through anything more than a foot deep. I think it's 10 inches, which by the way, we checked out. It's lower in the EV6 than it is in the Hyundai Ioniq 5, which sits higher. Yeah. So we had a problem in Houston as well with traffic, but we didn't have rain. We had rain actually in Arizona.
Yeah.
It's sort of a surprise. People in Arizona were looking around going, what's this wet stuff falling on us? But you guys just hit it and hit it and hit it. Rain. Pretty much all the way to Mobile, Alabama.
Go. Here we are at another charger. It's the morning. We have a long way to go though. We had to stop last night because there was torrential rain, cars were off the road, emergency vehicles everywhere, and we thought, I want to win this race and kick TFL car's butt, but I also want to arrive in one piece and not kill Eileen, my cameraman, or destroy Kia's car. So so we called it. We stopped at about 40 hours, but we're going to see how much more time it's going to take us to get there, and we're going to talk about the whole thing on the Fast Women podcast that we're recording during this whole adventure.
Yeah, all the way to Alabama. And as we were driving, two things were happening. First of all, speed limits on the roads that were supposed to be about 70, you couldn't drive 70 and it wasn't safe. So we're driving at 45 miles an hour. So our time now is just, we're eating time. And because of how heavy the rain was on the road, the all-wheel drive system in the car is constantly kicking in, which it did a brilliant job of keeping us from hydroplaning, but that also affects your range because it's using the battery to do that. And just kind of eyeballing what it was showing on the instrument cluster, it was every mile we were driving, we were eating up about 2 miles of range. That's how much it was impacting. So we couldn't go for as far as we thought. Like it just, the timing, like within a very short time, we're like, this cannot work. There's no way we can make this up.
Now, I did read that at one point you guys were really cutting it close, and you got to a point where you were worried about using the windshield wipers, the heater, and you even were unplugging your components from the car to charge, and you also lowered the lighting inside the car.
Yeah.
Anything you could do just to shave just a little tiny bit off to give that car perhaps a little bit more range. And at the same time, a lot of people don't realize that rain can actually cause a lot of slowing on the car in terms of drag. You're actually pushing through something that has weight to it, and it can actually affect efficiency even on gas vehicles.
Okay, this is the last night we're doing this. Our little Kia EV6 is all tucked in and charging. And we took the battery really low, all the way down to 8%, which was just a little stressful. But this is our charging stop for the moment, and then we're going to leave Louisiana and make our way, continue on to Florida.
So now you guys are at a point where I believe you're down to 18 miles of range, or was it 18% of your battery? I forgot which one it was, but it was, you didn't have much left.
We didn't have a lot, and we were in Mobile, Alabama. And the thing, it was partly the range because we could find another place to charge. Like we were going to be okay on that. But as we were driving, the weather was genuinely bad enough that like every mile, not even every mile, we were seeing a car off the road. They were hydroplaning off the road. And it wasn't just sports cars going fast. There were SUVs, there were crossovers. We saw a giant trailer like carrying cars that had just careened into the woods.
Wow.
Off to the side of the road. So there were so many cars off the road. And I thought, even if I'm okay, like the handling and the key was fine. It was handling like a champ. But if the guy next to me isn't doing the same thing, I don't want him taking me with him into the trees and hurting the car. So it was, looking at the timing, like we are not going to make it. Why are we still pushing? Because now it's getting a little unsafe,
Yeah, I believe you made the right decision, aside from the fact that our record stands. But by being safe, you were being smart, and also you were helping other people on the road by getting off the road.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that people, if you get off the road, there's one less person that will be an issue. So I believe that there was one point where you had a really bad time with Electrify America's system, CCS, where it was you pulled up and all of them were not working, and you had to call them and work through it. But it did work out.
Yeah. So we had some issues with Electrify America, but at the same time, like I feel it's important to say they even reached out to us like, guys, can we help you? And like, no, we wanted to see what this was like, average Joe. We didn't want insider help. And they addressed and have actually messaged me like some of the weird things that we experienced. Like we had a credit card reader that was saying it was cash only. I'm like, well, that's and it's which I know. I'm like, I'm missing how this works.
At this Electrify America station we were about to plug in, but I'm looking at the credit card reader that says cash only. I have questions.
And we had some of the machines, like a lot of them that we would plug in and try to charge, and they're, nope, sorry, out of order. Readjust the car, plug in, try and charge. Nope, sorry. And there was one where we got down to the last one at that bank of chargers. And then it gave us a really slow charge. And it's like, well, this is it. It's this one or nothing. So we had some issues with that. We did have one where there was some kind of software issue. So we tried calling their support, and their support, to be fair, was brilliant. The guy was immediately on the phone, figured out where we were, figured out what was going on, got the machine rebooted so that we were able to charge. In fact, we had said, the same message is showing on the other chargers here. He's like, you know what, I'm just going to reboot those since you brought it to our attention so nobody else will run into the same problem. So we did have that. That was definitely an issue. And a lot of them, for a certain stretch, I forget the exact message, but it was like, charging speeds at this charger are slowed down because we're doing maintenance and improvements.
Yes. Yeah. We had to deal with that as well. But for the most part, I would say that sounds like you had a fairly positive involvement with the charging setup. And you were able to go, I think you did what we did when you could, which was when you dropped down to around 10, 15%, you'd stop, charge it up to about 80%, and then keep on going. Am I correct?
That was exactly the strategy we used, because that 10 to 80% is sort of the sweet spot. If you go over 80, suddenly you're sitting there, you're getting a tiny little bit of charge for a very long time. And so you can charge really quick from 10 to 80. So that was our goal, but so that's what we did. I think there were a couple spots just because of the distance between chargers. We had to go over the 80 because we wouldn't have had enough miles to do it if we hadn't gone over. So we had a couple where we went a little bit over. But 10 to 80 was our goal. We tried to stay right about there.
That is, it works. When it works great. And you can squirt the car. And I think that for us, we averaged less than 20 minutes every time we went from, say, 10, 15% up to 80% when everything was going great and we got to the fast chargers, the really fast ones. But there are all these other issues, and we could go in and spend hours talking about infrastructure issues because they certainly exist.
Yes.
And then there's the other side of it, which is, well, if you were driving a Tesla, you wouldn't have these problems, or you wouldn't have as many problems, which is true. I mean, but they have a much more robust infrastructure right now because they've been around for a lot longer and they figured it out early. But I think one of the reasons we did it, I have a feeling it's maybe one of the reasons you did this, is because A, you wanted to prove it could be done. You wanted to be able to go cross country in an electric vehicle in a short amount of time. And most people still look at electric vehicles as, I'm terrified to drive this thing anywhere near its limits because I don't want to, be a paperweight on the side of the road. And indeed, if you run out of juice, you're in deep trouble on the side of the road, because they can't just run up with a large battery and shove it in there. There are things you have to do to get it going again, usually a flatbed. I came close to completely running out of juice. I'm wondering, did you go to a place called Junction, Texas? There was a small motel there. And
I think we did. We were in it. We did go to a motel in Texas that had like 4 little charging stations, and that was all that was it.
That was it. And it was like on a hill?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's in the middle of nowhere. You're driving, and like, if there's not a charging station here, I don't know where we're going.
I pulled up there. This is when I went solo back across the country, and I pulled up there with less than 10% of the battery. There were a lot of problems that I incurred going solo, and all of the stations were dead. And I know I was freaking out, because what I did was, first thing I did was try to find an alternative station. The only thing I could find was 50 something miles away, and it was a level 2. And on my trip, I don't know if you had to do this, but I actually had to use level 2 a few times just to get from one station to another, because things were broken.
Well, here's where it kind of gets sucky. We had to drive 12 miles off of I-10 to come up here to Mobile's Walmart, because this apparently is the only fast charger in the area. And now we got to go 160 miles. Is that right, Cole?
170.
170 on the next charge. And come over here with me. And the two 350 chargers have the screen of death. That's one of them. The other one's over here. So we're charging on the 150. Same thing. At least we got the 150, so I feel grateful for that.
But fortunately, Electrify America did, they went on the horn, they figured out what was going on, they got it running. Even though it took a long time, I still was able to power up. But this type of infrastructure needs to be robust, and it needs to be as effective as a gas station. I've been saying it, I'm sure you have too.
Yes. Okay, so it's freezing cold in Arizona, which should be warm because it's the desert, which confuses me. But what confuses me even more is this. So we were trying to plug this in, and it is plugged in and charging, but this cable is really thick, and it was so stiff, it took Eileen and I both manhandling this cable, laughing our heads off to get this in. If there hadn't been 2 of us, I don't think we could have plugged this into charge tonight, because it's just too cold.
And now that you've gone cross country, now that you've experienced the joy of driving electrified America cross country, essentially, what do you think? How far are we from actually becoming a country that can really use EVs for cross country?
If you're using EVs every day, you can do that right now. If you're just doing it around town, not a problem. If you're doing it cross country, I don't feel like we're there yet. I feel like we have a ways to go. If you get horrible weather and suddenly you can't make it, and you're in a spot where you didn't have a lot between those charging stations, you can find yourself stuck with nowhere to charge. And just the unreliability of it, where you don't know if you're going to find them working, and you don't know if they're going to give you remotely the charging speed that you expect. So your 10-minute stop becomes an hour-and-a-half stop. That's an inconvenience too. Like, and I kept thinking, like, God, what if I had kids in the car? Can you imagine having to stop and just sit there forever with kids in the car because you don't get the speed you want? Or I'm stopped on the side of the road with kids in the car. So I feel like we are a long ways away. I mean, it's everyday use in your area where you're pretty comfortable with where you can stop and charge. That's one thing. But for a road trip, especially someplace like where we were going, that route that we traveled, Nathan, it's not ideal. It's a little nerve-wracking, and I don't think it's ready. I don't think most people would want to do that.
I agree with you 100%. And then I want to add to that, because you guys were in such severe weather, imagine a blackout, which you guys probably were on the verge of a few times as you were driving. Granted, some of these places do have alternative power sources that can, in an emergency, kick on. And I'm hearing that in the future, everything from hydrogen to diesel, all these things can kick on later on when these facilities become a little bit more, prevalent. But until then, just imagine what would have happened if you guys were going through torrential rain and then you had a blackout and you weren't able to charge your car. You guys would have been in deep trouble.
We'd have just been sitting there going, okay, well, I guess this is where we live now. And just like, that's where you park. You are very limited, and you feel it almost when you're driving to these charging stations and you pass gas station 1, gas station 2, gas station 3, gas station 4. There's the chargers right there. Like, there's so many options for a gas vehicle. Until you can charge that easily, it's not going to be a comfortable experience.
Completely agree with you. I've had a thought about that, which is I really wish that there'd be some sort of, I don't know, government subsidy where gas stations could have, each one would have a couple fast chargers, and maybe they get a tax break for having those electric chargers there. And so that way, at least it'd be somewhat competitive and there would be a lot more chargers out there. I know it's easy to say and hard to do. Right. There's one thing that really bothered me about going to, and it's not just EA, it's even Tesla. Mm-hmm. When you go to a gas station, you can use the bathroom, you can go and get yourself a cup of coffee, blah, blah, blah. You can also take a squeegee and actually clean all the insects off your windshield, right? Little things like that. And when you go to these charging places, you're not able to do that. You have to back in, plug in your car, and then you're stuck and, spinning on a handkerchief and trying to clean your windshield or whatever.
Yeah,
there's something that kind of bugs me.
There's just not for everyone that loves truck stop and you have everything you could possibly want. There's one that it's the little hotel in Junction, Texas, where there is nothing but the chargers in a hotel that you're not even sure is actually functioning anymore. So it is, your break isn't always a break for anything but the car, because you can't get food. You can't take a bathroom stop. You can't do anything except stretch your legs while the car charges.
And that's the thing. So the hard part of this trip, and what Roman and I immediately discovered, is going cross country and trying to do it. And we call it a cannonball because, yes, the cannonball is, as fast as possible across the country. But because you're in an electric vehicle, you really can't go that fast to maintain your range. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is when you stop and charge, especially if you're able to maintain that 15-minute window of charging from 15% or 10% up to 80%, not a lot of time to really take care of things, especially if you're in an area where there's no bathrooms and everything else. So doing this, and what you guys ended up doing, of course, going cross country, not a lot of time to do stuff when you're charging, which is the only time you have to stretch your legs and get out and take care of business.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a very different experience because you have that. Even if you're not on, like you said, cannonballing, trying to do it quickly, if you want to be able to stop and charge and then get something to drink, you're making 2 stops. Mm-hmm. The idea that you can do both of those things at once only works, I don't know, maybe half the time, maybe. The other half of the time, you have to make a stop for the car and then a stop for you and a stop for the car and a stop for you. So it's not... So in addition to adding time, just in terms of you're waiting for a car to charge instead of the 5 minutes it takes you to fuel up if you're using gas, you have to find another spot to charge to get everybody their cheeseburger and Diet Coke and bathroom break, Exactly.
And that's really the challenge of this type of thing. And I think that at least for the next, say, 3 or 4 years, it's going to be a challenge until the infrastructure really grows. So I'm going to put it out there to everybody. Nicole has proven that it is difficult. It wasn't as easy as 2 jokers just driving cross country. But it is doable because you still were able to get there, even though you spent, I think it was like 4 or 5 hours in Mobile overnight.
We stopped for exactly, it turned out 5 hours that we stopped. By the time we called it and said we have to stop, we're like, well, we might as well just get a hotel, spend 5 hours, wait for the rain to clear and start up again. Yeah.
And that's about 700 or 600 miles to Orlando, give or take, I think, from Mobile. I actually stayed in Mobile coming back.
Okay.
Which, by the way, they have great food there. I never knew. It was just amazing. But so the next day, you guys wake up, you jump in the car, and you go to the fountain.
Yeah. And we still had rain. That was the craziness of it. We still had torrential rain during that. Like we got on the road, like, yay, it's sun. And then poof, the sun went away and we had torrential rain again. And we had to make a couple of side stops for chargers, even in that leg, because again, we were just losing range so fast because of the resistance from the water. Found a really cool little coffee shop in some sleepy little town and waited for a while I was charging at the world's slowest charger, but it got us going.
A lot of people will eventually learn, because we are about to get hit with a lot more in terms of electric vehicles and electric options. The big difference between a fast charger and a level 2 charger, because you can sit all day long and wait for that car to charge on a level 2, whereas if you have a proper fast charger, you can be out of there in 15-20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference. Okay, so let's finish off the trip. You guys made it to the fountain. You guys, by the way, there's a really good restaurant right next to that fountain in Florida. I don't know if you guys got a chance to eat around there,
You should
but
have told me before I left on the trip, Nathan. It doesn't help me now.
yeah, I know. Okay, so I guess you didn't go there. My bad. But after that, what the big difference is, Roman and I straight to the airport. He was out of there. I drove home, essentially, taking my time. You guys, you went to Walt Disney World.
Well, we went to Disney World. Eileen basically spent the night in a hotel and then flew out first thing in the morning. So she was there for a hot minute. I went to Disney World for a few days because my daughter is working down there right now. So I hung out with my daughter. Yeah, I hung out with my daughter and spent a couple days in Disney. And then I came home.
So really funny thing, about a week before you guys did your trip, I was at Disney California with my family. Yeah. So I want to put it out there, even though Disney definitely does not pay us for any type of plugs. Rise of the Resistance is the best ride I've ever been on in my entire life.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's a really good ride.
I'm going to leave that there. It is incredible. We went on 3 times.
But you got to come to Disney World in Florida and go on Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah,
gives it a run for its money.
Yeah, well, they have a Guardians of the Galaxy in California, but it's part of the Tower of Terror. And
yeah, no, this one's like a roller coaster thing, and there's music. And so come to Florida, you miss that. I don't know if it's better than Rise of the Resistance, but it's close.
Okay, well, see, I'm going to take you up on that one of these days. If we do this again, and actually, Roman and I have discussed doing this again, possibly in a gas vehicle, so that way we can set a bar for that run.
Okay.
I think we can do in less than 38 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because you're doing far. It depends on the car, though.
Right. But yeah, there's so much less time to fuel up than there is to charge up. Yeah.
Precisely. So, and you might even be able to stop and actually get a half decent meal on the way. I can't tell you how much fast food we devoured and how sick we were by the time we got to Florida.
I had a bag of Milanos for lunch one day because it was all I had left in the car. I mean, Milano cookies are good, but they're not ideal for lunch.
I had some corn dogs from Walmart, and that was a big mistake. And Roman was just preparing for horrible things, but it all worked out. Okay, so Nicole, thank you very much for joining me. Let me ask you a question. If you had an opportunity to try this again, would you?
Yes, in a heartbeat, because it was really interesting. I learned a lot about just driving EVs and sort of like living with an EV that you can't learn just having it for a little time in your driveway and then giving it back to an automaker. It's like, no, you're going to do a thing in this and drive it like you owned it. You learn a lot. It was interesting. And I like road trips. Road trips are awesome.
Yeah, I'm a big road trip person myself, so I totally get that. Well, as I said before, we're throwing the gauntlet out to anybody. It doesn't have to be a journalist. It can be anybody who's watching this or hearing this. If you want to do a cross-country run and try to break a record, and the best part is that we did it completely legal. I'm sure you guys had to be below the speed limit.
Yes.
And you can't really break the speed limit too much because you're going to kill your range. And so that's kind of the cool part about this. So anybody else out there who wants to do the O to O or D to D, sorry, it's so confusing. Give it a try. Let us know. And don't forget to check out Nicole and Eileen on Newsweek's Fast Woman podcast.
Thank you, Nathan. I'm so glad that you had us. And thank you for doing this, because Eileen and I never would have taken the trip if you guys hadn't done it first.
Well, there you go. For once, TFL's done something right.
One time.
One time. All right. See you guys. Take care, Nicole.
Bye.
Bye.
Here we go.
Can we all see the fountain?
We see the fountain. I am stopping it. Officially done. Look at the time, dude.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding.
Are you kidding me?
46. 46
I can't believe it.
46 hours and 46 minutes. Yeah. And we drove officially 38 hours and 31 minutes driving. Total time 46. So that, what is that? We spent 9 hours charging. About, right?
It feels like it.
Yeah,
At least.
spent 9 hours charging. We averaged 2.7 miles per kilowatt hour. Yeah, wow.
And I'm going to say it exactly this way. They said we couldn't do it in less than 48 hours. A lot of people were like, no, there's no way you're going to do it in less than 48 hours. We did it less than 48 hours. We busted our butts doing it.
Yeah. Oh, I am so happy to be here. I think I'm going to go sleep for like 20 years now.